So, just watched Doctor Who Series 13, Episode 3 once, comma, upon time. As I've said about that title, although possibly not one of these videos, it's not the best title, because if you're saying all the titles of the stories quickly, or well, it's one story, but all the parts, you'll say, the Halloween Apocalypse, War of the Sun Tyrants, Once Upon Time. It's annoying to pause. You don't really want a story with a comma for that reason. The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Not the best title. Anyway, this story, I'm not really sure what to say. I mean, I think it was good. Maybe. Sort of 7 out of 10, I guess. But, as always, but I don't really know what to think. It didn't have a conventional structure with, characters and villains. Basically, half of it was jumping around different time streams and timelines with characters sort of holographically becoming other characters. A bit reminded me of Forest of the Dead. At points, especially when the Doctor's hologram was appearing. And other stuff, it was sort of about the old Vinda and this other woman, I think her name was Belle or something, right at the beginning. I'll tell you what annoyed me though, there was a bit where she was seemingly escaping this Cyberman sector, Dalek sector, some Tyrant sector. There's a bit where 10 Cybermen stormed into her ship and she just shot all of them, hid behind the corridor. I thought, why hadn't she set up, if she knew this was going to happen, she could have had a trap ready for them. So it's you might say, okay, well, why didn't they just send 2? If they'd sent 2, it would have been more realistic that she could have killed them and not been killed. But no, you think, okay, well, they probably sent 10 after her. But then she just hides behind the corner. They're trying to shoot her, all these lights are flashing, and they just miss every time. And she can just crouch around this corner and then fire and gets them all. And I know that's always what sort of happens, is they miss, but it's just stupid when there's 10 of them. A single Cyberman's supposed to be a huge threat, for God's sake. Especially of that type. Maybe not a Mondasian one, but, that sort of one. But otherwise, yes, I've just watched it. I don't really remember. I won't go over half an hour like last time without flipping sidetracking into lots of other stuff. But yes, yes, I don't really know what to say. I mean, it was just sort of like the first episode. It was just sort of jumping around a lot. There was a bit where, it was odd to see the old Ruth Doctor was in it from series 12 at the end, as the reflection. They had the usual Chibnall stuff of characters sort of explaining what they were doing and thinking instead of actually doing stuff. They were just saying it. And, but at least at the end when the Doctor looked at her reflection, she didn't say, she's gone or something. That would have been annoying. I just expect bad writing. I'll tell you what the other thing is. There was that scene with the old Weeping Angel, of course, which Tribunal seems to just... Look, it's just that, of course they're great monsters, but you think he probably doesn't put them in because he's thought of this great idea for them. Well, who knows? The next episode's probably more Weeping Angel-centric. He's probably put them in just because they're popular, and maybe he's got some idea. But it's imagine if... What he should do is come up with a story, come up with some sort of plot or something, and then realise, that these monsters would fit that story. They would work and make it make sense, instead of putting them in because they're popular and people like them and then seeing how to make them work. It just seems like they've sort of been inserted in just because, of course, people like them. But unfortunately, because it's a 6-parter with various monsters and things, you can't really call it just a Weeping Angel story, which still technically means the last proper Weeping Angel story was flipping quite a few years ago, 10 years ago at this point. Flipping Angels Take Manhattan. They've showed up quite a few times since then. But they haven't had their own story properly. There's no fly on my keyboard. Anyway, so, yep. The scene where they were, the Doctor and Jasmine, I say it's odd to say because it wasn't really the Doctor. It kept jumping between different characters. They were playing some game. I want to look at that bit again, but what really annoyed me about that scene was just they were playing some game seemingly sitting on a sofa with controllers, and it never ever showed the game or at least for a long time in the scene, it never showed it. And they were both sitting there with controllers. I'm thinking about that, because I've just watched it, I haven't even looked at it again. I could be clicking around, but it's annoying if I'm doing all that and you're flipping, I'm clicking a lot. It's distracting, I thought. But yes, they're both holding controllers, playing this game, and I just thought, I want to see what it is. It just annoys me. I understand they're probably not really playing it, whatever, but they could have had an establishing shot showing something. It just irritated me that we see it, but we don't see the screen for ages. Then, so the whole time I'm just thinking, come on, show the thing. Then when they finally do, here, I've got the image here, and it's just sort of a person holding a gun. It's just like a first person thing with someone holding a standard sort of gun, looking forward. It's just the most generic looking game I think I've ever seen. I mean, I know they probably, it's probably, I mean, I can't imagine it's real. It's been made for this episode, right? But it is the most boring, generic, dull looking game I've ever seen, based on what it looks like. Isn't there actually a Doctor Who with Angel game thing? Angel-y, yes. I don't know. It's probably Doctor Who's never really had any good games. I mean, the adventure games. Well, here we go. I'm gonna start sidetracking myself. I'm just saying, City of the Daleks was alright, a bit dull. Blood of the Cybermen I really liked. I haven't played them for years, but I used to, when I actually could play them, I used to play them quite a bit. TARDIS was the third one. I quite like that one. That Shadows of the Vast Nevada was the best one, I thought. And then the Gunpowder Plot was a bit dull. The first four were supposed to be like the series 1, and they were in 3 parts, basically. Like, you would get to the end of it and it would load, and it would be like part 2. Whereas the Gunpowder Plot just seemed to keep loading constantly into new parts. I didn't like it as much. I didn't like the setting or time period. I didn't think it was as good. There was an Easter egg in it where there was like a silence would appear, silent. I always think the plural of a silent, if you've got one silent, if you remember them, and the plural should be silence, obviously, as in SILENCE, because wouldn't that be brilliant? But no, the plural is just silence, like SILENTS. That's stupid. Wouldn't it be amazing if the plural was silence? Because that's what happens when you're in a room with several of them, is that's the sound that results ultimately. There's a screaming and silence or something. But no, whatever. It's like that's where the plurals come from, it's those monsters. But no. But yes, there was there was one, in somewhere in the game you could like look away and look back and it would appear. Can't believe I remember that. Anyway, that's so funny. Anyway, but yes, the game they were playing, awful. Single player only. Why were they both holding controllers when there's only one person with a gun? I mean, I know they probably didn't put tons of thought into it, clearly, but there's no thought. The least they could have done, I mean, what is it? It's not an online thing. They're both holding controllers. Why isn't it split screen? It doesn't make any sense at all. What was going on? And then, of course, there's a weeping angel in the game, and it's quite fun because it's like, how does that? I mean, of course, it doesn't really make any sense. What it somehow managed to get flipping, some sort of polygonal model to be rendered into the game, because obviously it's not the same resolution as the rest of the game, right? Must have somehow fit into the data. I mean, the point is it's, stolen its way into the game somehow. It doesn't make any sense, obviously. But anyway, and then I thought it was a bit stupid. Twice in the episode they had bits where weeping angels appeared. Actually, 3 times, because there's the bit in the car, because the bit in the car, the bit here with the game, and then the bit at the end in TARDIS. All 3 times they had to have the Doctor in a varying level explaining, don't blink, and it's like, I get the point. They explained it 3 times. Now the first time, okay, you understand, even though they showed it in the first episode, fine, explain it once. I don't know which was first. I mean, I could check, but I don't want to be looking around at this. Was it the car one first? Yeah, a while ago, yes. So there was the thing in the car, but then the thing with this game was really stupid because, well, it was like that bit in the Time of Angels where, see, I'm just talking about this scene, it just irritated me, this one bit. In the Time of Angels, when Amy goes in the room and then she's left in there and there's the angel on the screen. I mean, I've seen all these episodes so many times, I sort of assume you should know what I'm talking about. I mean, I imagine, right, that scene, and of course, she pulls the plug out, and, I mean, there's the bit where she pulls the plug, and the screen's still on, looks up, and it's suddenly right there. That really scared me the first time I watched it, but I was like 8. Anyway, or something, I was 9, surely. Yes, anyway. Well, I would have been 8 at the time, surely. Anyway, the point is, yes, that was a good scene, obviously. I mean, well, it's quite good. But putting the power out didn't work, so it turns out the recording has a little blip on it every time it loops every 4 seconds, and she pauses it on the blip because it's the image that gives it the power, and that stops it, that kills it. Excellent, I mean, it's a bit literal because you think if they thought there was only one angel, and that happens, surely that's that one angel dead. But no, that's just one form of it. Effectively, there's infinite angels. The moment you've got an image, there's an infinite number of them, I suppose, in a way then. But anyway, here, well, firstly, Yasmin just pulls the power out and it dies. So, doesn't fit with the Time of Angels, aka an ever. Well, I just thought it was a bit stupid. That's all she had to do. Could she have just turned the television off? Presumably it would have turned it back on, right? Because that's what happens in the story. But she pulls the power out and that stops it. And the other thing is, it's just like, the whole time it was attacking, getting closer, the Doctor was just quickly monologuing, like, don't blink or it'll send you back in time. It's explaining the whole thing. But it's like, as if rapid exposition will make the scene more intense. Not really. What they needed to do was have a few seconds of seeing the angel, panning or probably cutting to show the people staring at it, trying not to blink and stuff, and a few seconds to build up the tension of them staring at it, trying, and then they could have seen, look, there's the power thing, looked back and it's closer, or then it's in the room, and then they quickly dive and get it. I mean, I've only watched it once, so maybe it was, they did some of that stuff, but not properly. It was far too fast. They didn't have any tension of like a few seconds. It's like a staring contest. No, it's just like, it's just really quick. It was a bit annoying. 11 minutes already I've been talking. Okay, well, anyway, so that scene was rubbish. Wow, wasn't that good? The Doctor kept going into this purpley thing with these three giant things. I don't know the names of the stuff. But yes, it was a bit stupid. And then she was, well, it was okay, but it does seem a bit odd how it was just occasionally like, oh, now she's here. But it was sort of jumping around. The first half of the story I thought was quite good because it kept leaping around different bits of time, changing people. There wasn't really a plot you could say was happening. It was lots of different little things intercutting. I don't know, but anyway, I mean, that's sort of what you expect, surely, rather than just one plot going on. But you do think it's almost, wow, it's not Moffat-y enough to be any good. Anyway, right, whereas I am, great, good quality. So anyway, then I refused, there's no editing. Anyways, what do we have? There was, yes, then it turns out the Doctor asked them, show me one more thing from the past, and it was starting to blow on about all the stuff on Timeless Children, whatever it's called. Child of Time, that 11th Doctor comic strip. Yeah, Timeless Children, and no, thank you. I would rather not. It was odd. I mean, I like the fact that it was odd that they had the power to show the Doctor what they could do. They were just in control of the plot. It was like she was talking to the writer. The other thing is, I think, well, having Ruth, the Ruth Doctor appear, I thought, why was it only her? Isn't she supposed to be like a secret pre-Doctor? I suppose that implies Doctor. These creatures had powers that could go back. But it's stupid because in series 12 the implication was no one knew at all about the origin of the Time Lords, or that the Doctor was this first one and all that and blah. Tecteun, as the Master kept repeating. Otherwise you wouldn't remember. Whereas, I was just saying, the word Fomazi was stuck in my head there. Isn't that creature from flipping Leisure Hive? Anyway, what the heck? What am I thinking? Anyway, right. But suddenly these creatures can get this thing of the Doctor's past, even though it was this great secret that up until series 12 no one had ever knew. Suddenly these other creatures can do it. See, I'm not quite sure what was going on with that. Plot hole or just rubbish? Well, obviously a bit rubbish. I don't know. So I could give it a 7 out of 10 because it was interesting. By the end, it was like, oh, interesting stuff happening. But I'm much more interested in the next episode. I mean, I just want a good story of some characters and a mystery, and then, plotty, building up his stuff, tension, and then a resolution. If every story was like that, it'd be dull. But I mean, come on, that's a standard story. I always like a good standard story, like Planet of the Ood or flipping, I don't know. I always think of that one when I think of a good standard story. The Doctor and the companion are in the TARDIS, they land. You could cut out the bit where they're in the console room, in a lot of stories, like Caves and Rosani, they were going to have a bit at the beginning where they were in the TARDIS and they cut it. I think they didn't actually ever film it. Like, there was going to be a fight with the Doctor and the Magma Beast in part 5 and they didn't have time. Part 5? Part 4? I'm probably thinking 5, 5th Doctor. Jesus Christ, part 4. Obviously, I've watched that. Caves and Rosani. Well, I've watched edits of it without the Magma Beast a lot. I don't know, 10 times, 15 times. It's a great story. Whenever I watch Caves and Rosani, a little bit high here. I always think I never quite know what's going on. I don't know if I've ever fully understood the plot to it. I mean, you know, you've got Stotts and Savage Jack, and they're sort of these two factions fighting. Well, I thought it was just the bit I always remember getting confused about is, oh no, I think it's you've got Savage Jack and his androids, and he's got the what do you call it? I haven't watched it for a while. The Spectrox. There's the bit where the doctor says, someone said that Spectrox was the most valuable substance in the universe, or the rarest substance in the universe, or something. And it's like he didn't actually say that, it was an error in the script right there. Anyway, or maybe they just cut it. But yes, in part one, that is. I can't remember the name of the character though. You know, the one who's got sort of, you know, he's all bald, he's in lines, his hair's all back, and he's got like a little ponytail, and he occasionally turns at the camera and says, and then we shall all feel a lot better. You know, that guy. I can't remember his name. Him. He says, and we shall all feel a lot better. I just thought I better insert the word then for a bit of fun. But no, it's a great story. That is an odd thing though, him turning at the camera. Yes. Well, you know, it's a good story though. I always like that. It's very bizarre. They've never done it before since in that way. I mean, they had, well, lots of Fourth Doctor stories have people turning at the camera, but it's always a bit, yes, but that was just like in, well, Underworld, Face of Evil, you know, obviously Invasion of Time several times. But of course, you could always just say, well, maybe it's him just talking to himself or laughing at himself, you know. You could be explaining that. What about in the Before the Flood or Heaven Sent, you know, where the 12th Doctor is obviously talking to the audience? I mean, obviously in Before the Flood. I seem to remember reading someone complaining about that once because they were saying all the pastimes, it could be explained that the Doctor was just talking to himself. But that time in Before the Flood, he so clearly was talking to the audience. It was a bit annoying, but anyway, I don't think so though. Well, how can you be annoyed by that? The bit where he plays should have been first 4 notes, 3 of which are the same of Beethoven's fifth, as he always calls it, not Fifth Symphony, he just calls it his fifth, as if the word symphony is redundant. It's not worth putting the word symphony in an episode, it'll make it much worse, they obviously thought. Anyway, so, this story, what was it called? I can't remember. What am I saying? Once Upon a Time, yes. It was okay, but I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10 because it was entertaining, I suppose. I just don't ever quite... I think once you have a story where you can have lots of characters jumping in... I mean, I've written stories like that myself, you know, where it's like time is going wrong and all this stuff's happening. It just breaks all the rules. You can do anything at that point. Once you have characters appearing as other characters and hopping around different bits of time, they could have done so many different things, and what they end up with is always going to be a little bit inferior to what you can possibly imagine happening. And so, it's a good story. Wow, good part. It's okay. I mean, I'd have to watch it again, but bits of it, I mean, the Weaving Angel bit was annoying, and then at the end, it was like, oh, we've got to quickly have a bit that's lead to the next episode. And so you see, my point is, well, it's like, the second story was like clearly a story, second part. It's like a Sontaran episode, basically. You don't need to watch part 1 or part 3, you could just watch that and it would almost work by itself. First part, was a bit odd, and you certainly can't watch it just by itself. This part was more like the first part. I guess part 4 will be more like part 2, in that it'll be more of a standard story, and then maybe it'll be an hour long again, 59 minutes, and then part 5 will be more like parts 1 and 3, and then 6 might be more of a standard one, although if it's intercutting more with the Fluxy stuff, maybe not. But the point is that this is another story where, another part where it doesn't really work by itself because of all the ways it's leaping around. But it's almost like it's just its own story. Like if you cut part 2 out and had 1 and then 3, they would basically fit together still. And it would just be 2 parts about the Flux stuff, you know. Sort of. I mean, it had the bits with the mine in it again, you know, the people and the 1820 or whatever, what year they said it was. Sort of like in a... you know, the Mark of the Varney. I was going to say Time of the Varney. God no, don't watch that. Leaves the girl, it's the man I want, etc. It's great. Anyway, yeah, so Mark of the Varney, brilliant. No, it's rubbish. It's not that good. It's I mean, Sixth Doctor in general, he's rubbish. So whenever you watch him, watch a Secret Doctor story and it's not completely awful, you think it was brilliant because you expect it to be totally awful. And Mark Advani is a prime example of just so mediocre, so dull. The number one reason being 45-minute episodes. It could have been a 4-part 24-minute, because then at least you divide up the anguish. 2 parts of 45 is so tedious. Better to watch it in 30 minutes and then 15, so you've got less to go. I think that's actually how we did it. When I last watched it, we watched it like that. We watched half an hour of it, so that the next time we wouldn't have to suffer it for so long. Or like 25 minutes of it maybe, but yes. Because it's just so dull. Anyway, I mean, that's the thing with Doctor Who in general, though. Is, I mean, I love it, obviously, but, you know, an awful lot of the time you spend sort of thinking this is boring rubbish. It's true. I mean, I'm always sort of exaggerating it when I'm saying this sort of stuff, though, and it's been late at night. Well, I'm just saying. I mean, I don't watch them live, you know. It's been 18 past 9. Flipping, as far as I'm concerned, it's past my bedtime. Well, maybe not. Anyway, but, you know, it's only because I know how good it can be at its best. Watch the Mars, obviously, best bit of television ever, from all my experience, that I know how good it can be, so it's so dull when it's not that good. Not that I expect it to always be, or not that good, but it ought to be alright. Can you hear people? Anyway, well, there you go.